Welcome to the Road to Redemption podcast with your host, Cam Williamson. Each week, Cam sets out to shatter the labels and stigmas associated with mental health awareness by giving life lessons and raw overviews of events happening around the world.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to this episode of the Road to Redemption podcast. I'm, as always, your host, Cam Williamson. Today, we're talking about living in survival mode. Boy, do I know a lot about that, unfortunately. Survival mode and living in survival mode has, like everything else in the mental health world, has a whole spectrum of possibilities. It can come from your upbringing. It can come from specific instances that happen to you, just in life in general. For me, a lot of my survival tactics in my survival mode that I live in a lot of the time are intermixed with PTSD, right? So a lot of mine comes from the military. That's where my survival mode really started. Once I went off to basic, I was in a very fragile state. I was coming from being broken completely down by relationships, by parts of my upbringing, by current life situations. So I was at a very, very vulnerable and fragile state in life around the age of 18. I had just had a child, who I found out the woman had cheated, or she claimed she did, and that it wasn't mine. She took that kid and moved to a different country. I was dealing with a lot, right? So I was down here just wanting to connect to anything. Thankfully, my mother got me hooked up with a recruiter. I joined the Army, and I became that. My experience with the military didn't really start, though, until 2015 when I deployed. I got in 2010, and I didn't deploy until 2015. So when I deployed to Guantanamo Bay, I wasn't as fragile as I was when I was 18, but I was damaged more, I believe, with more unhealthy coping mechanisms. So when you have traumas in life and when you have severe, instances that happen in your life and they go unmanaged or even unaddressed, and then you find these coping mechanisms, and a lot of the military is routine. A lot of the military is suppressing emotions for amounts of time so you can complete a task. Those are beneficial things to learn. The problem is we all know that idea of like the soldier switch. You got to be able to switch it on and switch it off, because when you go home and you're around your family, you shouldn't act the same way as you do at your unit. Well, when you figure out that yelling and screaming and being very stern with everybody never makes you have to address your emotions and your fears and stuff like that, it just becomes a part of your personality because it works in the aspects of life in which you operate. So in the military, being a hardened, emotionless, person, borderline not even human, but just a thing able to perform a task. And especially, we were getting ready to go into a very highly scrutinized place. We were going to Guantanamo Bay. So everything we did was met with a sense of urgency and importance, and threat levels are way up here, not just for physical reasons, but for ramification reasons. Every single thing that comes out of your mouth, every single thing you send via message, all that would be scrutinized and would be, judged by, some of the biggest figures in our government and stuff like that. And it would be later used for possible trials and decision makings. And it was a heavy burden, not just to mention the daily activities inside that place. Stuff like that, and seeing certain things in life that maybe you otherwise would have never seen had you not put yourself in certain situations, which is what causes the trauma, right? You almost let a part of yourself die when you see something, and you go, I'm never going to be so vulnerable that I let myself get either where that person got or where I was at a certain point in my life. And then you tend to harden. You tend to run, or you tend to attract towards things that make you feel comfortable or make you feel better in the moment. Some people physically run in survival mode. Some people will attack other people in survival mode. I think a lot of people self-medicate with alcohol and cannabis and a lot of other shit. It's perfectly acceptable, to take a medication every day at the same time to regulate your mood. But again, we scrutinize people when they have a drink every night or they smoke every day or something like that. I think we need to do less judging of what it is that the person is doing and look at why they're doing it and how often they're doing it and see that there's a problem there, like maybe they're living in survival mode. That was my problem with alcohol. I had a belief from a very young age that I was worthless, that I was incapable of doing anything, that I was dumb, that I was annoying, that I was the bottom of the barrel. I wasn't good. I wasn't over the top athletically. I wasn't over the top musically. I didn't impress anyone to the point where they were all strucken with me for any reason, and I was just a very average, probably even sub-average kid. Right? So when I went into the military and I became something to at least people that knew that I was in, it was this sense of, oh, well, you're never going to take this part of me away again, because I'm never going to go back to that cowardice piece of garbage that nobody respected. At least now with the title veteran behind my name, people have some sense of respect for me, even if it's not completely all founded. People treat all veterans the same regardless of what they have done and who they are, which I don't think is correct. But when you come from nothing, and I'm talking about inside in this situation, when you have no confidence, no self-identity, no nothing, whether you just had never had it or it was stripped away from you by someone or something, you learn to just survive each moment. And this is where we're breaking into the context of social media being addictions just as much as alcohol being addictions, because we all know it's not acceptable to drink at 9 a.m, but it's perfectly acceptable to scroll through your phone, and you're getting dopamine shots and your serotonin levels are being adjusted, and you're just merely surviving in a moment of boredom so you don't have to think about the possible trauma that's causing you to have an issue with the stillness. I can tell you, anytime that I'm alone and there's nothing going on, I hate it. I hate it. I hate it only because I know that there's possibility for connection out there. There's someone somewhere who probably would love to have a conversation and tell their life story or tell what's on their mind, and it kills me that person can't be heard by me if I'm just sitting around doing nothing. That I can't listen to someone, hear their story, empathize with them, and possibly try to help them. That's something that physically bothers me. It causes me actual physical anxiety, energy inside my body that can lead to depression and shit like that if I just sit stagnant around the house. Guys, I'm going to admit again, this episode almost didn't get recorded today because I've been in full survival mode the past 3 or 4 days. I've had an issue driving at night recently. A couple months back, I had to leave super early. A lot of you guys know I get my oldest daughter once a month, and I drive halfway to her mother's house. Where her mother lives in Indiana, so we meet in Kentucky. It's about a 2.5 hour drive, but with a time change, you have to treat it like a 3.5 hour drive. So I used to leave at 3 a.m. Well, I left and I was driving for about an hour, having full on panic attacks because my vision was not working with me. And I got to the point where I couldn't drive anymore. And I had to call and tell them that I wasn't safe to put my daughter in the car with me, and I had to try to get home as quickly as I could while being safe. And ever since that moment, my body goes into survival mode when the sun starts to go down and I'm driving. And because of that, I had my daughter this weekend. I had to figure out how can I never let that instance happen again where I lose time with her because of something I'm going through. And I had to adjust my whole family's schedule so my wife could get off early, so my daughter could come with us, and, got to put them through this drive now because I don't know how I'm going to handle this drive at night. I handled it fine, but my wife drove home. And then, I brought her back Sunday, and it was daylight the whole time, so everything was fine. But that Friday night, in all the catastrophizing that I was doing about how a tire blowout could turn into a rollover, could turn into my whole family dying on the side of the highway, all because I'm not successful enough to just be able to fly there, grab her, and fly her back. Like, this is all the stuff that's racing through my head. This is all the shit I put myself through, which causes me to just be at a level of energy that is so overstimulated that even if my kids talk to me or say anything or try to touch me, I'm so... Because all I'm trying to do is survive when I feel inadequate, when I don't feel like I have the whole universe under control behind the steering wheel, that I can't prevent a blowout, so I have to make it the worst possible case scenario. Because, again, in my life, I just came up believing I wasn't shit. Bad luck is just what happens to me. All these victim-type mentalities. And I'm 30 years old, and I've actively been working on those things for like 3 or 4 years now to fix them. And it's something that even if you're not willing to make the hardest change today by acknowledging it and by being willing to make some changes, you will ultimately get to where you're going. And I really respect people like Jordan Peterson because they encourage stuff like that. Like, if you look at all the problems you have in life, all of them, right, that you currently have right now in this moment, you can look at all of them. Pick the one that you're willing to deal with. That doesn't have to be the hardest one, but he also has something that he says where it's like, if you have to eat a frog, eat it first thing in the morning. If you have to eat 2 frogs in a day, eat the biggest one first. And like, that's how he kind of looks at life, which is, okay, you can either look at all the problems you have and choose to work on the ones that you're only willing to work on. If you're not willing to work on the other ones, then don't even address those because you're not willing to work on them. So let's just fuck off with those. But then there's another mindset where if you know there's a hard task in front of you for the day, well, fucking get it done and be done with it so you can accomplish it and have the confidence to move forward. But that's what both ideas are leading towards, which is if you start doing minute things that you know you should do, you're going to gain more confidence in your life to do more things. So by refusing to call off the drive on Friday and go, I'm going to drive, I'm not going to have my wife drive, but I'm going to drive, put my glasses on, and I'm going to force myself to live in what I know, which is my car is fine. I can drive, I can see, I am fine. I am someone who will be there for my kids. And then you do it. My anxiety was so far up, I was starting to physically get sick. So I told my wife, hey, I did what I, told myself I wanted to do. I drove here through the night. Can you drive back? And then I took 2.5 hours. I was still sick the whole time. I got home. And I felt an immediate wash where I literally felt myself exit survival mode. Now, I didn't let myself fully let go because I knew I still had to make the drive Sunday and come back. So I still had 5 hours in the car, but at least half of that I'm by myself. And I noticed that was a big key. I was like, well, I don't give a shit if the car rolls over when it's just me. I can't stand to fathom even having a flat tire with my kids in the car. It just terrifies me to think of the possibilities. And then I realize where all the anxiety stems from. And then it gives me something to work towards where it's like every time I worry about my kids' safety, I can't put myself in survival mode where every time they do something like have a tantrum or act inappropriately that I'm like, hey, this is what we're going to do. And I feel like I have to flurry and fix everything right this second because everything's getting so out of control. And now I feel like our lives are in jeopardy when they're not. But it's real. It's a real chemical reaction based off situations in your life where previously I may have had to have gone, do this now, or else, because it might be life or death, for real. Maybe not even just for me, but for somebody else, the person I'm talking to, whoever. And I don't want that for anyone. I've never wanted that for anyone. I've never wanted harm or pain or anything like that for anyone. I noticed the quickest way to put myself in survival mode is when my youngest daughter does this thing where she goes, no, 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 no. And she's, sure, a lot of the times being completely unreasonable. But to me, I remember being in a jail cell, and internally it was like I listened to my inner child going, no, 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 no. What did you do to us? We're fucked now. Whoa, no, 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 no. Our life is over. No, please, no, anything. Please get me out of this. With the despair, right? And that despair and that never wanting to be there again can cause you to do things that you're currently doing because it's better than what you may have used to have done. And fuck, that's hard. Because your current comfort level is absolutely probably better than where you were. But you want to be better, so you have to learn to break away from these cycles of survival. Because if you don't, you can't grow. You may be safe for now, but we all know you can't grow when you're just surviving. Whew, it's tough. That doesn't mean you're not entitled to safe time. It just means you cannot be in a constant state of wanting to protect what is, because you don't want to slide backwards. Because if you're only protecting what is, we can't get what could be. On the good side, we just have to stop focusing on, like I said, the catastrophizing side of it. Guys, I love you so much. If you made it all the way through, please thumbs up this video. Check out the Road to Redemption podcast.com for all the merch and our new designs. Like I said, thumbs up the video. It helps so much. Subscribe if you want to see more. Hit the bell if you want to see it as soon as it drops. Know how much I love you, and I'll check in with you on Wednesday.